I'm going to start just with a few slides this morning to go over and set the stage for some of the concepts, but really focusing on strategic and operational reporting around PPM, leveraging the business objects reporting solution as well as executive scorecard. And I'll do a few of the slides and then we'll actually get into some live demos. Just quickly, a little bit about ResultsPositive. We're a North American consulting and software provider for HP and an exclusive HP elite partner. In fact, we've been Partner of the Year in PPM, Executive Scorecard, and in 2013, the Support Partner of the Year. And our focus is on 100% customer satisfaction as we work with our customers. As a company, and I've been here now a little over 2 years, have grown up kind of in the space of the strategy planning and governance where we're focusing on Executive Scorecard and HP PPM and HP Anywhere. But over the course of the last 18 months, we've moved into a lot of the additional product areas that HP covers, including the ALM space, where we have a strong presence now in the ALM space, as well as the BSM and cloud and operations. We also do SaaS offerings for many of the HP products, as well as the mobile development team, where we're doing application development on the HP Anywhere platform, as well as on native platforms. So that's a quick overview of ResultsPositive and what we're about. So let's get into the meat of this. So HP really has taken an approach over the last couple years or 3 years to solving some of their challenges with reporting within the PPM solution. And the first layer that they really addressed was with the business objects operational reporting. And I'll walk through this in detail in the demo. But it's embedded with the product or included with the product now. It has, you know, an out-of-the-box ETL that gives you near real-time access to the operational reporting data coming out of your PPM solution, as well as the, you know, always have been the PPM dashboards and portlets. And then really at a more analytical and operational level is where you're kind of in the middle with executive scorecard and PPM dashboards and portlets. And then finally at the stop level, the strategic measurements where you're really focusing on KPI views and trending and history of those KPIs is where executive scorecard comes in. And so when I was at HP and we built this pyramid probably 4 or 5 years ago, this was the long-term vision to have the real low-level operational reporting covered by business objects, the highest level in the strategic covered by executive scorecard, and then a combination of those two really in between when you're talking about some analytical dashboards with operational capabilities within the solution itself. And then just draws pictures of those. So let's jump into executive scorecard quickly. And I just want to run through kind of HP's approach to this from the perspective of rolling out executive scorecard. So as you look at executive scorecard, it does, in some cases, cover this gap between strategic and operational, where you're really looking at roles of, you know, the CEO, CIO, VPs of the PMO and operations and applications, looking at those highest level KPIs and metrics. But then there is some capabilities, and I'll show some of this within the scorecard, to leverage UI mashup as well as calling external sources into the scorecard to support some of that operational reporting for application managers or ops managers, et cetera. And so we'll walk through this, and then I put business objects here to show really where the focus for business objects is. It's at that much lower level of operational reporting. From the perspective of HP Executive Scorecard, the big focus here has been on building out-of-the-box KPIs for the existing HP products. And so if you look across the particular areas, the PMO, there are 21 KPIs that are out of the box, and the majority of these come straight from HP PPM, and similarly with the finance KPIs. The ALM, Application Lifecycle Management KPIs, supporting the apps dev group, and then on the ops side is where the most KPIs are coming from. The BSM suite and the Information Management suite, as well as some security KPIs coming in to the executive scorecard. And, as we walk through this, these are out of the box. They do use the standard functionality within, as an example, PPM, and they know what a project is. And, some of the areas that require changes as you go through implementation of this is you may not leverage the business objectives field as an example, and there are KPIs that will show by business objective, and so some of those changes need to be made for implementation, but they're fundamentally built, the KPIs out of the box, and really what you have to do is address the filtering for how you're using PPM or the other feeder applications. Why HP Executive Scorecard? It's near real-time KPI visibility. One of the nice things that this does is aggregates the performance KPIs into a single scorecard. It's very easy to access third-party data, whether it be another system or solution, another ITSM solution, or something that you're building in spreadsheets. The underlying engine within the executive scorecard, and specifically around the ETL, makes it very easy to bring in third-party data to support your KPIs. So as you look at the main features or main driving features for Executive Scorecard, we're really talking about the out-of-the-box content as a big starting point, especially if you have other HP products already in play in your organization. The KPI architecture is there to support and build new KPIs, and building a KPI is really as simple as putting in an Excel formula. You, of course, have to do the underlying data, but actually building the KPI within the UI is doing like an Excel formula. The extensible IT data warehouse with out-of-the-box integrations to the HP products is a big deal when you look at the 150 or 200 KPIs that come out of the box. But then the IT data warehouse is very extensible with the extensive ETL and the Excel integration with third-party solutions. Well, one of the things we'll talk about here is the balanced scorecard approach, and what they've really done is allow you to define a set of objectives and goals within the executive scorecard, and those are configurable. And then ultimately, you define the KPIs and the metrics to roll up to those objectives within the scorecard. And so you can define your IT goals and objectives specific to your organization, then you measure those KPIs and roll them up and actually score them. And there's weighting and scoring built in that's configurable within the scorecard, and we'll see that as we get into the demo. The UI is very customizable within Scorecard. You can move all of these panels around, make them bigger and smaller. As I'll walk through the demo, I'll show you how you do that. So very easy and personable UI within the Scorecard. And there's just another example of some of the different charts and capabilities you have within the Executive Scorecard. I will talk just for a minute about the underlying technology of this. So probably the secret sauce from my perspective is the universal data model within HP Executive Scorecard. And this is also what makes it very easy to bring in third-party data, because HP has gone to the point with all of their products to define what a project is and what a defect is and what a vendor is. And so when you see the out-of-the-box KPIs coming from BSM or AM or PPM or Service Manager or, server automation, any of those solutions, they all abide by this HP Universal Data Model, which says a project is a project. And, there's projects in ALM, as an example, that have to be the same thing as a project in PPM. And so that mapping and building that universal data model that started to bring this all together so that you can bring these sources in. And then there's the IT data warehouse, where you do ETL generation using business objects data services to define the ETL. And of course, you can come from external data sources or third-party data sources or even Excel data sources through the ETL, ultimately into the universal data model. And then there's this top-level layer that's really the UI and the KPI library and the KPI engine that builds the solution out. So that's kind of a technical view of Executive Scorecard from a platform perspective. The executive scorecard is also available on mobile devices. It looks pretty impressive on the iPad. So business objects operational reporting, this was introduced with PPM 9.1, and it fundamentally allowed you to basically have HP PPM 9.1 running on its standard Oracle PPM database, and there's an ETL that extracts the data into a business objects reporting database. And this comes out of the box with PPM 9.1 and above. It's included in the licensing if you want it. And it actually has financial, resource, project, and time management plus a common universe that come out of the box, as well as a set of reports, and I'll walk through those. It also provides unlimited self-service ad hoc queries and reporting capabilities. It minimizes that reporting performance impact on PPM Center because all of the reporting is done at the business objects data level. And there's an ETL. There's a one-time full load ETL that runs, and then there's an incremental ETL that runs periodically to move the data into business objects. So these are just some examples of the out-of-the-box reports. So this is the project status list report as an example, showing the status and its health, and then ultimately showing the details of the project. Here's a timesheet compliance report. Demand versus capacity. This is probably, if you're using resource management extensively in a fairly large organization, this report will really help replace those analyze assignment load portlets and other things, because this allows you to very quickly go across the enterprise and get your demand versus capacity for your resources, which is a huge report if you try to run it in PPM. And if you have several hundred resources, you may not even be able to get it out of analyze assignment load, but you can get it out of the business objects reporting. And then finally, this is a financial summary report that's also part of the standard package. So at that point, I'm going to jump into the demo. We'll start with the business objects operational reporting. So I'm going to log into a PPM 9.1.4 instance that I have, and I've created a dashboard in here that shows how you can leverage the out-of-the-box business objects operational reporting. And so you can see here the list of out-of-the-box reports, bar this PMO metrics one, which is one that we have in our demo environment. The demand versus capacity, the project status list, the financial summary, and actually there's one more, the timesheet compliance, this completed projects is another demo one we have. But the four out-of-the-box reports are demand versus capacity, project status list, financial summary, and then the timesheet compliance report. So if we drill into something like the project status list report, you can see that this report is in business objects that comes up with a list of parameters. And this is an out-of-the-box report, so the only required parameter is the primary grouping. And you can choose to change that grouping if you wanted to group it by business unit as an example, versus grouping it by program. You can change that grouping. And then there are several optional parameters, whether it's a project name or the overall health, who's the project manager, quite a few optional parameters to this project status report. But let me just go ahead and execute the query without any parameters, and you'll start to see the data come up here broken by business unit. So this is using demo data, but the consumer business unit shows here. The project number, you can of course minimize this tab and start to see more of the report. And so as you look at the capabilities of the out-of-the-box reporting, this is like a project status overview. There are, inside the scope of here, a lot more fields that are included. You get all of the descriptive data about the project, as well as the financial data and the percent complete as an example. And then you can actually drill into a particular project. So let me find one here that I know might have some good data. And this is actually running a separate report now that shows some of the details of the project, including things like the work plan milestones. Then you can go to separate tabs for issues, risks, and scope changes associated with the project. These out-of-the-box reports are a really good starting place to build reports in the universe. And so that's fundamentally the capabilities of the out-of-the-box reports. And these are just using URL portlets to show the actual business object solution running inside of PPM. And you can modify these portlets and actually choose the particular report that you want to show up. So if you wanted, as an example, a timesheet compliance report to automatically show up in that portlet, then by editing the filter preferences, it automatically shows that report as opposed to another. So you have that capability to do that within each of the portlets in the solution. So that's out-of-the-box capabilities. You can also build your own reports within the business object solution, and leveraging the universes that come out of the box, build your own reports. So if I look at Executive Scorecard, which is now up and running here, the contents of the scorecard are really this scorecard, which is definable, and you define these set of objectives and goals. And then under each of these, so for instance, if we look at the PMO as an example, under each of these is a set of KPIs that build up that. And so if I open this Explorer up, I can actually see the KPIs that make up that particular objective on the scorecard, and this is loading the data associated with it. And so you can see here each of the KPIs that make up that PMO score of 5.91. And so the percentage of healthy projects, as an example, see the history of it, and you can see that KPI is what rolls up ultimately into that score. And when you define each of these KPIs, you define its weight of what rolls up. And so if we go into the data set as an example, here is actually where you can see the formula. It's not showing it very well. The formula that derives that percentage of project tasks on time. When you define the KPIs within the scorecard, you define the formula, you define the data set that you're going after, and then you define the thresholds that turn it red, yellow, and green. And in this case, 60 to 70% of projects on time is red, 70 to 85 is yellow, and above 85% is green. And so that's really the capabilities of building out the scorecard and the associated KPIs. And then it really becomes looking at the data components of the scorecard. And you can see this is all adjustable real time, so you can move it around and get different views of it. But each of these panes is also something that you can build out. So if we look at percentage of healthy projects over here as an example, notice that we've wireframed these together, and that particular one actually does have some data that shows each of the projects. And so these two frames, this KPI view and the breakdown view, are actually wired together. So anytime I click on a new KPI, this view is going to go gather data and refresh that data based on the KPI that we're looking at. And so in this case, we're looking at the top 10 or the bottom 10 projects as an example that are impacting that KPI. And so that's the CIO scorecard. Let me go actually to the PMO page. I'll show you a couple of things here. And these are actually more driven towards what would come out of PPM. And so if we look at example, improve project execution, we have a set of KPIs, the deviation of planned work hours, the average project initiation time, the average project delivery time. Those KPIs are not calculated in this particular set of demo data, but we do have percentage of healthy projects for October 2013, the percentage of projects with unresolved urgent issues, project tasks on time, and those are the KPIs that ultimately roll up into that scorecard. And so if we look at one like improved staff effectiveness, it has only one KPI that's driving it, and it's the percentage of project effort done by external resources. And in this particular case, it's at 44.4%, which is considered red based on that particular definition. So the other thing you'll see on here, though, is what I talked about from a UI mashup perspective. And this is looking at that a similar business objects view. This is actually a ResultsPositive specific reporting package that we've developed on top of the business object solution, but to show how it's embedded within the scorecard, so transitioning from that strategic to operational. And I'll just show you a couple of examples in here. As an example, we've developed out a project dashboard that allows you to see some more specific business objects type and Excelsius views of those projects. And so as an example, and I'll just make this a bit bigger so we can see it, I'll move this over. As an example, you can now see things like actual versus operating, and this is actually looking at all projects, and if we want to drill into a specific project, we can filter here, and then that starts to look at a set of data for a specific project. And so this is leveraging the out-of-the-box business capabilities with a package we've built and then put the UI mashup in the scope of the executive scorecard. So you can actually be at that operational level, drilling into the specifics of the particular project as an example, percentage of completed tasks, scheduled versus actual effort, etc. So those are some of the capabilities you can do with the business objects and executive scorecard together. I will show you that there's also the ability to run reports directly from here. And so if I were to go into, as an example, project management, you'll see a list of reports that we've defined that you can go ahead and execute right in the scope of this. And it'll actually give you the reports right in the scope of the executive scorecard as well. And so that's the combination of bringing the two together. Let me just pop through some of these other pages. You can see we went over the CIO scorecard. There's the VP of Apps page, and this is primarily focused on data coming from the ALM solution, as well as ITSM. And so if we look at something like increased automated adoption as an example, you can see this KPI for percentage of automated tests at 81.8%. If we go ahead and choose that KPI, we'll then see how that's been running for specific projects. And so you can see Project 12 only has 80%, and you can actually drill into that specific. That's the top 10 projects as an example. And then you always have the ability within the scorecard to maintain historical data and get the trending type graphs that you see here. We go to a quality manager page. This is probably another view where we're starting to look at things within ALM requirements, tests, and defects. But this is, as an example, percentage of reviewed requirements. This is coming out of ALM, percentage of requirements traced to tests. And then once again, if you click on that specific one, it starts to give you the trending over here for that particular KPI as you walk through it.